Welcome everyone to a very special episode of the People Stack podcast. And on today's episode, I am excited to chat with Tanaka Mutakwa. So he's based in South Africa. He's VP of Engineering at Names and Faces. And one of the reasons why I brought him on and why we're going to be chatting today is that he started a tech leadership community over there in South Africa to help each other to learn and have conversations and to share ideas about technical leadership. And because there's just so much alignment between what you're doing, Tanaka, and what we're doing here at the People Stack, we thought it would be, it's a great idea to come on and chat and share ideas, because that's how leadership grows. That's how we support one another to become the best leaders we can possibly be. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm excited to chat and dive in.
Cool. Now, thank you so much for the warm welcome and the introduction. Also excited to be on the show today. And yes, excited to share and discuss about tech leadership. I think we always grow through learning, and sharing all these ideas with our communities will really be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into the nitty gritty of areas of focus for technical leadership, so that'll be our main topic for today for folks to kind of plant the seed. That's going to be fun. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you. What was your reasoning around starting this leadership community over in South Africa?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things there. I think myself as an individual, I've always been interested in leadership, and I'm a technologist. So the combination of technology and leadership is a space I've always been interested in. And throughout my career, I've been researching and reading up on and observing, like when I have good leaders and bad leaders, like what causes you to have bad leaders, or what traits do like good leaders have. So that's one of the things, it's been a personal interest of mine and the journey I've been on. But also I've been, as part of that learning bit, I've also been involved in other leadership communities. And at a previous company I was actually at, I was privileged enough to go to one of the lead dev conferences in New York. Mm-hmm. So I attended that, and while I was there, I just also felt that something like this is missing, a community like this is missing in South Africa, and it would be good to just go back to Cape Town and try to see how many other people would be interested in a similar community or a similar space. And simply the goal was just to create a community of people who are aspiring to be leaders in the future, tech leaders, or people who've just been made tech leaders, and also fully experienced tech leaders who've been in it for years, and they just help each other grow and share ideas with different approaches they're using at their companies or they use in their leadership space. And I think the root cause or the root problem we have is a lot of companies have no way of actually preparing future tech leaders. People get selected by being good at technology. So you're the best engineer on a team, and someone walks up to you one day and says, listen, you look like you really do good at your engineering job. You're going to be the manager for this team going forward, or the team lead for this team going forward. And then all of a sudden you're now in this new role and you realize it's completely different to the engineering bits. Yes, the engineering bits help, as we discussed when we're talking about the focus areas, but then there's a whole lot of other things that come with leadership, which comes to the soft skills of communicating and just generally being able to work well with people, which people perhaps have not been taught about or may not be interested in. So it doesn't necessarily mean pick the best technologist. So it's topics around that the tech leadership community in South Africa tries to educate people on and to share ideas with each other.
Excellent. You know, one of my mentors once told me that the best way to learn how to lead is to lead. That's how you get the experience, but how we get even better is by leading and talking about it and learning from one another and saying, okay, this is what works. This is how we become a great mentor. This is how we learn those people skills. You don't learn them from a book. You learn them by actually going out and doing it. And then the books can actually give you that extra anchor for, oh, that's why that works. And now I want to go try this. So I love that you're fostering this community of learning and growth and sharing. And I also love how there's beginners and more seasoned folks as well, because I think that it's an ongoing journey, and and it's never done, and that's what's fun about it. That it's really awesome. We love it when we see the more seasoned, more experienced technical leaders that might have 10, 20 plus years of leadership under their belt to just empty their cup and say, what am I open to? What can I unlearn so that I can then relearn at an even higher level? So I love that. That's awesome what you're doing. And speaking about lead dev, the article that I actually want to chat about today is the article that you wrote for Lead Dev on the 4 areas of focus for successful technical leaders. So I highly recommend the people who are listening to check that article out. It's really well written, I have to say, so great job with that. You really break it down, and it's really concise, and it's really powerful as well. So you break down the 4 areas of focus for successful technical leadership. So people, product, process, and tech stack. So where I'd like to start is to kind of take a step back, and actually talk about something that you were just mentioning, which is about how new leaders tend to focus almost too much on the tech, because that's where they were brought up, and either forget or don't pay as much attention to the people aspect of it. So if we were to look at these 4 areas of focus, and I absolutely agree with you, this is definitely one way to break down leadership into 4 different areas: people, product, process, and tech stack. Do you have, what's your opinion? What's your way of looking at how much to focus on each given area, particularly say for newer tech leaders versus more seasoned tech leaders? Would you recommend to them that they focus more on people because the tech is going to be because they're so focused on tech, right? Maybe it's start learning the people stuff. So what would you recommend, and what have you seen as far as how much focus to give to each of those 4 areas?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's a very good question. I think the usual cheating answer in tech or whatever is it depends. But a few things did come to my mind when you were asking the question. I think the correct answer is actually, it depends on the context you're dealing with at the time as a leader. Some things evolve very quickly in this tech space, and even at one company, for the first half of the year, maybe the pressing thing might be a technical problem because you're having a lot of technology issues as a company and you need to fix stuff. So that's where the pain point comes from. And then in the second half of the year, it's a lot of people related issues because maybe a lot of people want to leave the company and you need to keep the morale high and you need to recruit new people. So it really, most of the time, ends up depending on what's the context you're in. But I think you end up still solving you'll be dealing with one of those 4 issues that I've highlighted in the article. But I want us to end that answer with a bit of a disclaimer to say, the one thing though I have learned is if you get the people side wrong, then nothing else works. So in the article, I didn't highlight that people was first, but I did put it first because I still think that's the most important one. So if someone had to say, choose one thing that you absolutely need to get right for you to have a working team and a working high performing software team, people, you have to get the people a bit first right. Everything else you can sort of then figure out from the people. In fact, a lot of the things then flow from getting the people, how you work with your people, how they are working together, and the relationships you have, the trust you've built with them, correct. And so that's the highest priority for me. I think that would be the one. If someone's just become a leader, if I had to give them a piece of advice, I would tell them, learn as much as you can about people and how you build a high trust environment leading you to a high performing team.
Yeah. So let's definitely dig into that a little bit more, because I think especially new leaders, but I think even seasoned leaders, it's we hear it all the time. People are important, right? My husband likes to say, so he was VP, he leveled up to VP of engineering, and then he retired to join me full time. So he's my co-CEO. And one of the things that Rob, my husband, likes to say all the time is, all tech problems are people problems. So if you have a tech problem, yeah, there may be some tech that you need to fix, but at the root of it, there's a people problem. So love this line of discussion here. So yeah, so I guess the next question is, what do you mean by people? So focus on people. So you mentioned high trust, you mentioned high performing. What would be the other components or things to focus on within that people category?
Yeah, so I think if I'm looking at it from the perspective of a leader, I think the very first thing is you genuinely care about the people you're leading. Individually, as each person you work with, you genuinely care about them and their career, and you are on their side. You want them to grow, you want them to succeed, you want them to thrive from a genuine perspective. And then from that is the trust building, which is the person you're leading needs to also know that you care for them and believe that you care for them. And they want to see that support coming through, but they're also able to bring you any problems they're having, any issues they're having, anytime they're having a struggle. Then you've built like this trust and working relationship together. Mm-hmm. So that's the part about like, okay, let's build trust. From there, then it's now about, okay, I need to understand this individual or the individuals I'm leading and what their career goals are, where they're trying to get to in the future, where they're trying to get to in the short term. Everyone is different. So you'll find some engineers want to be very technically focused and perhaps become like a staff engineer in the future or a CTO. Some engineers perhaps want to go the management route, and some maybe want to be entrepreneurial and eventually leave coding and do their own thing. Mm-hmm. But understanding where someone's trying to get to will help you shape their path and ensure what they're doing now and everything they're doing at the company perhaps aligns with where they're trying to go to. And then you can now start helping and supporting and keeping them accountable and everything around making sure you're helping them get to where they want to go. So that's where I see like the people side of things. But I think if I loop back to genuinely caring about the person is the example I sometimes give people is it's almost like it's your friend, like your actual friend, even though it's a working relationship, but it's your actual friend. So even sometimes your conversations are not necessarily only about, let's just get to the work piece. There's nothing wrong with talking to people about what is actually happening in their lives, because it helps them get to know you better. And you also being open to share what is happening in your life, because you're going to be working with this person every day. So I think that's where everything starts. That's where the people component starts. Then once the trust is built, then it's like, let's look at your career and see how I can help you get to where you need to get to. And I'm supporting you in that journey and seeing you thrive. So
yeah. It's all great stuff. That is great stuff. Could not agree with you more. These are exactly the kinds of things that we help our clients with. And I'm curious, from your perspective, from your experience, whether it's in your own experience coaching and working with your team or through the part of the community that you're a member of, I'm curious what misconceptions you think you see the most. It could be common among early beginning leaders, but again, seasoned leaders can develop those misconceptions as well. Because, like, for example, you mentioned, like, talk about what's going on outside of work. And I think like we've mentioned that to some of our clients sometimes in talking about building rapport, building trust, having that genuine caring. I'm like, oh, wait a second, what? This is work. You want me to ask about their kids? And it's just like a paradigm shift for them. Like it never even occurred to them to do that. So that would be like one example of a misconception or just a shift that people make to be like, oh, that's what you're talking about when you're talking about genuinely caring. So what are the other things that you work with people on or that come up in conversations around this?
Yeah, so something that's come to mind is the idea that the leader has to know everything. That's a misconception that's immediate as for a lot of, I think it comes from perhaps how people saw leaders when they were growing up, or they seem to believe all the answers came from them and everything. So you think when you become a leader, you suddenly have to know it all. And not realize that there's nothing wrong with actually just creating an environment where people are the ones who are better than you in the actual execution, but you are facilitating and helping them work together and creating the environment that allows them to work together and succeed as a team. And when you don't know something, being open enough, even if it's to someone who reports into you, to say, actually, I don't know, what do you think? Or does anyone else in the room know? So there's actually nothing wrong with being wrong. And yeah, and I think the other one is, there's also the misconception that a manager or a leader has to have like the command and control, has to be the person who's everyone is like sort of scared of, and they only execute tasks because they've been given by the manager what to do and everything. But there is actually like environments and places where people actually almost work with their manager as if it's their peer. And of course, you can get asked like to do something, but it then doesn't come from a place of, my manager asked me to do it, I have to absolutely do it now, or I'm in trouble, my manager called me into a meeting, or anything like that. But more like, it's actually just, we are working together, we trust each other, and we support each other in what we do. So yeah, I think a lot of the misconceptions around relationships between manager and the person or leader and the person who reports into them or works with them. And then of course the idea that the leader knows it all, which both of them are incorrect. Like, no one knows it all, even the leaders of the big companies, the CTOs of the Amazons, and they are they are there to set the direction and create the environment to succeed. But then the people who really know it all are the people who are doing the job, and they're empowered to do their job well.
That's so spot on. That's so spot on. And then another one that I heard you say is about right and wrong. That there's nothing wrong with being wrong, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like, it's tied into the two that you talked about, and it's almost one that stands on its own as well. Because I think, especially for the people who are coming up from having like a coding background, like coding and math, like there are a few areas in life where there is kind of like a right and a wrong. Two plus two will always be four. You can argue up and down until you're blue in the face. 2 and 2 will always be 4, right? But then but even in engineering and coding, there's 101 ways to skin that particular cat, right? There's maybe best practices, and so, but then once you start moving into leadership and people, and here's the desired outcome, here's how we could move toward this desired outcome, but there's so many different ways to do it. One of the other ones that I noticed, misconceptions, is still staying so strictly in that right or wrong mindset. And instead of that, what we want is just more of an openness to what are a bunch of different ways that we can do this, and this is one right way, but it's not the only way to do it. So is that something that you've noticed too, that sort of right or wrong mentality getting in the way?
Yeah, exactly. Especially if it's someone who's come from a strong engineering background, where they are very purist into a technical solution works this way, and this is the best solution.
Yeah.
And then if they come into the management or tech leadership space, and they come with the same approaches, it can easily overflow into that. Yeah, and I think like it related to what I was saying earlier, it can also easily lead to always being the bottleneck and wanting to solve every big problem yourself. Or being the final say, like I should be the final say. I should be the one who comes up with the solution and give it to everyone to now implement, versus the reverse is, and I should present a problem and let's see what like 7 people in a room or working together for a couple of days can come up with as a solution. Possibly way better, most likely way better than one person's solution by themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, and that actually comes up a lot. That sort of that purist mindset, that sort of fixed mindset of this is the way we do it. It comes up a lot in what would be under your P, or actually under the process P. So that's where you talk about like agile methodologies, Kanban and waterfall and all of these different things, that if people come from a very strict background of we do agile and we do it to the book, right? But even like I know enough about agile. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced both ways. But I know enough about it that actually at the core of it, it's supposed to be flexible. But so many people are like, no, this is how we do the stand-ups and this is how we do that. And so that's what you're talking about in your four focus areas. Process would be like, what's our development process, what's our project management process. So that's what you're talking about when you say that particular area of focus would be that kind of thing, right? That's what you mean by process.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I was trying to highlight in the process piece is it's good as a technical leader to understand the many different approaches that now exist or that different teams used or that you've used in the past, and see what can apply in your context and work really well. And what will happen is over time, even things that make sense now for your team may not be as useful in 6 months' time because you're solving a different problem or the team setup is different. And then you can be flexible enough to adopt the next thing.
Yeah.
But as long as you come from a base of understanding a wide range of ways in which teams can work, you can sort of decide to set a baseline one to start with, but then also now start pulling from each of the different methods, and start applying as your team gets better and better. Because your team is, if you're doing retrospectives frequently, you should be looking at your process and saying, where are we at now? What needs to change? What should we improve? And your team keeps moving forward and getting better and better. But it's always going to be different with each context.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is that's what gets into the high level strategic thinking that so many leaders want to build, and that's like a lifelong process of becoming even better and developing mastery in really high level strategic thinking. Is you're still looking at the data, but you're not letting it like overrun your life. You're looking at it and you're saying, okay, here's all the different ways that we can go. Here's the way that I'm going to decide that we're go, given that I'm the leader and it's my decision, but I'm open to other ways of doing it too. So that's that process. So we've covered people, we've covered process, we've talked about tech stack. Let's just take a moment to talk about product, because I think this is one of the areas where a lot of technical managers want to do better at, but are often like, I just don't know. Like, I'm not sure how to make this work, because it often involves interfacing with other people, right? The product managers, for example. So when you say product as a core area of focus, what does that mean and what does that entail?
Yeah, so I think the important part there is to understand why your organization exists. That's the product. Your organization's product is why it exists, because that's what you're presenting to the world. And you'll be surprised how many people can't perhaps explain their product properly to someone who doesn't work at their company, or can't explain who their users are or how their company makes money, which shows like a bit of a gap in understanding the product. And as a technical leader, your team's responsibilities are to build value into your product, build useful things that can be added to the product so your company can grow and it's sold to the clients. And if you are leading a team, but you have no understanding of what your product is, then there's a mismatch there. So the main goal with the product piece is, do you understand what your company is doing, what problem it's solving, who the users are, how the company makes money? And if you have a good understanding of all this, then you've got both sides. When you go back to your team and you're discussing how should we build this feature, how should we add value, what are the trade-offs if we decide to do more technical things versus more features, how would that cost? You've got more of a reason, an understanding of how you make those decisions. But also at the same time, you're also involved in a lot of conversations with non-technical people. What would be like the business side, or like you say, the product side or marketing and everything. And you can bring your technical perspective, but also with an understanding of what the business needs and wants.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's an important area to have. And I think the last thing I would add also is, in a very well-functioning organization, generally anyone should be able to have input into where the product should go if it's something that's going to benefit the company. And just understanding your product well can help you as a tech leader also be able to input into those decisions, versus waiting for people to decide for you and give you things and throw it over the wall for you and your teams to build. It should be almost very collaborative. So that's where the whole product piece comes from in that focus area.
Yeah, I love that. So important. The way that we talk about it at the People Stack is we call it product, and then if you wanted to look at it at a higher level, it's mission. What is the company's mission? What is the company's vision? And everyone at the company, from the individual contributors on up to the CEO, really should know what is the mission. What is it that we're producing here? Who are our users? Just like you mentioned, it's so important because that's what helps the effort that we put in on a day-to-day basis and all of this process work and all of this people work and all of this tech stack work, having that alignment with that vision, with that outcome in the end users, that's what makes it all happen. So I'm so glad that you included that in there. It's so important. Well, we're just about up on time, Tanaka. Thank Tanaka. I'm looking at your last name, Tanaka. Can I call you Tanaka?
It's not the first time.
Allowing me that slip of the tongue there, but it's been great talking with you, Tanaka. And we, let's definitely again do it again in the future. And thank you so much for taking this time to chat today.
Cool. No, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show. It was really cool chatting about these topics, and definitely keen to